prescription costs. She can actually reclaim dental, hearing aid and many other medical costs too.
And here to give your finances a health check is Carl Dieter, personal finance expert with advisors.ie. Hi, Carl, how are you?
Good.
So we could all be sitting on some money that we're owed and we don't know about it.
Potentially. What usually happens is that people are spending money on something, not realising that you can actually get a tax rebate for it. Now, there's a big list that people generally know about, such as medical expenses. What you might not know about, for instance, is education fees, trade union subscriptions, bin charges. Now, a lot of these have been ended for 2012, but when you're making a tax reclaim, you can go back 4 years.
Okay.
So if you were to do that right now, if you paid any of these things in 2008, 9, 10 or 11, you can reclaim for all of those years in one go.
And did I see maintenance fees in there as well for apartments?
Yeah, and service charge fees, again, they're all being ended this year.
Okay.
But if you paid them in the past, I think the cap was up to €400 in a year, you could claim back on that. Now, it's €400 by whatever your tax rate is. It's generally the standard rate of 20%. So it comes down significantly. But the point is, there is something there that you can get back. And Revenue in the past had given a figure, I think, of around 300 million of unpaid taxes. They then had this big push to get people to claim back their money. One of the nice things about Revenue is that we often have a sort of negative view that they just want to take your money. They actually don't. They want you to get back the money that you're due, and they want you to pay your taxes appropriately. And in that process, they actually process refunds quite rapidly. And you can do this for yourself.
How easy is it to get your money back?
It's simple. You can go to the likes of a firm of accountants like what we do, and we deal with Revenue via their online system. But if you're a PAYE worker, you can actually register on a thing called PAYE Anytime. It's on the front page of the Revenue website. That will be up and running within a day or two. You can process your own information, and you'll get a refund then usually within about a week from having done it. It's important, though. Make sure you keep all receipts. This is what's called an unvouched return. In other words, they're not going to ask you to send in all of your receipts to justify what you've said, but they will spot check. And if they spot check and you haven't got your receipts, then you've done something very wrong.
And how much trouble could you get into if you haven't got your receipts and you put in false claims?
Well, there's a series of ways that Revenue will hit you with surcharges, with penalties, with penalty interest. What I would say is, from my experience of people who are dishonest in their tax affairs, it's never been worth it. I've never seen a case where I said, geez, that was a really good idea. It usually ends in tears.
Right.
Okay, the trick is, when you're making a return, to see to it that you're able to sleep at night. Yeah.
Just be honest.
Yeah.
You know, it's not asking that much. Just tell the truth. And the nice thing is, they will rapidly refund you the money that is due to you.
Now,
and it's kind of hidden money in a way. A lot of people don't realise just how much you're sitting on. We've seen a typical refund when we're processing them of between €600 and €700, which is significant. Okay. It's not, you know, just small change.
Because I know even with me, my maternity package, I'm going to have to do this as well to get some money back on what I paid out.
Is that for consultant fees or?
Consultant fees.
Yeah.
Yep.
With consultant fees, you see, sometimes people are confused and they think, oh, my VHI paid for the hospital. You've got health insurance packages that pay for surgeries, and they will pay for rooms and various things. And then you've got your own money that you paid, and then sometimes your health insurance will have a cash aspect to it as well that will say, oh, we'll cover up to 5 GP visits, and they'll refund you the cash. It's important. If you get a refund from the likes of Aviva, you know, Leia Health or Aviva, that when you get a cash refund for a GP visit, you can't then also use that same GP visit to get a tax refund from Revenue. You can't do it twice. So what happens is you pay a little bit more to have plans that give you this cash aspect of it, but then you forego the right to use those same visits from a taxation perspective.
Generally, Irish people, we're not good with the dentist.
Not great.
No.
Yeah, we'd avoid the dentist at all costs.
We could be going once a year for free.
Yeah. When I first came here from the USA, my older sister, who's a hygienist, said that the thing she noticed was people had minging teeth. And that's not a technical term.
How dare she?
It's gotten a lot better, but it was one of the things that she noticed was the difference between people's DELF in the USA and California.
Yeah, well, now the US, it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they
taking
go
it to another level
to the opposite extreme. But this is something that if you make 39 PRSI contributions, now there's different things that have to be done depending on your age, but if you're working in a regular job and you're paying PRSI, you can get a free cleaning every year.
Just a cleaning now?
Yeah, anything beyond that then you again can claim back as a medical expense, but what you're allowed to get in terms of the free stuff is a cleaning. It used to be one filling, that's finished. Everything is being cut back, that's part of the endless austerity plan that we have, but it hasn't taken back everything. You can get a new hearing aid every 4 years. You can get an eye test every year. Precisely. So they're not removing all the benefits. What they're doing is they're stripping them down and they're lengthening the period that you can claim them in.
And you have to read the small print too, because there are a few rules there, aren't there, as to who can qualify?
There are, but on the dental one, I think it's a D1 form, and certainly on all the taxation things, I should tell people where to go to find the list. If you go to revenue.ie and type in IT1, it stands for income tax 1, it will give you a list of everything that's available.
Okay, now normally they look at, say, the tax year that was 2010 if you're looking for stuff during this year. But there are people watching this who say, well, my wife, I've been working, my wife hasn't been making PRSI contributions. How does she claim? Or my husband hasn't been working and I have, so how does he claim?
Well, if you're a working spouse, you actually are effectively contributing for the other person. Generally, there are tax allowances there, and you would normally then take on that person's allowances into your own, and so it's almost as if they were. So it's done the same way for a single person or for a married person. You go through the process. For as I mentioned, for dental stuff, it's a D1 form. For the hearing aids, there's a separate form. The Department of Social Protection looks after things that are sort of the free health visits. Its revenue are the ones that look after everything where you've paid something and you're claiming it back. So it's important to realise there's a distinction between the two departments that deal with this. Revenue is for expenditure, Department of Social Protection is for the benefit aspect of it.
Okay, now just moving on to pensions. How early should a person begin saving?
Probably the earlier the better is the general rule. The pensions industry would have you believe that you're going to get to retirement age and be a pauper. That's simply not true. Equally though, people tend to put off and not realise how much they may or may not need, and we also have to remember we're going to be living for longer. There is currently something happening that I think is really unfair, in that they're raising the pension age to 68. If you're under 50, you're going to have to work an extra 3 years than the people right now for what will probably be a lower benefit because there's less workers coming up, and you're going to effectively work longer for less, and I think that's really unfair. The dependency ratio at the moment, which is the number of workers for every retiree, is about 5 to 1. By 2036, it's going to be about 2 to 1. The only way to solve that is to actually lower the pension benefit that people get. So I would suggest that people really get used to the idea of not thinking that the state is going to take care of you, and coming up with your own plans. Now, for some people, they do that with property that they plan to rent out. And when they buy property and pay it off, it's almost like a forced savings because you have to make that mortgage payment every month. Other people do it with pensions. There's people who have gold-plated pension schemes, but they're not so gold-plated when you look at what's going to happen. And that's the defined benefit schemes. They were always seen as being really good, but the majority of them are actually insolvent. Upwards of 80% of them don't have the money. And new legislation came in which is going to force them to deal with that insolvency. The frustration for people in those schemes is that they have believed that they have this gold-plated scheme, but it's not, because the actual retirees who have already stopped working, they have a precedence. They're going to get looked after first. So you might end up having paid in a huge amount of money on something that you thought would have a value of 100,000, and find out that your pot afterwards is really more like 25 grand.
And so many people have been scalded like that already,
haven't they? They are going to
haven't
get seriously ripped off. You will see a lot of anger and a lot of headlines in the coming months as this starts to push through. It's going to be a huge source of anger, and rightly so, because people who are coming through the system, they didn't do anything wrong. You know, they paid their money in good honesty, and it's because the actual pension itself was insolvent that they're going to get hit. And they probably will be angry again at the people who have already retired, who have they're completely looked after. No negative effect on them, just a negative effect on the people who are still working while in the midst of austerity, while
it's
having to carry all the other things that are cracking us up lately. So it's
Well, on that high note,
I always end on a happy note. You know me, I'm always.
we'll see you again in a couple of weeks, Carl. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay. After the break, I take a tour around Dublin's Merrion Square, which is celebrating its 250th birthday.
Plus